sitting at 33, obviously, you have 32 teams ahead of you. So, we really got to see how it plays out. I'm not going to box myself into any hey, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. Ideally, though, if we're sitting there and there's a really good player, we'll take them. Trading up, those are discussions that we still have to have. So, I think everything's on the table right now. I don't want to box us in right now.
I don't mean to be dramatic, but the Carolina Panthers cannot, I repeat, cannot afford to mess up this NFL draft for the year 2024. Is way too crucial for this team's future. And it damn sure sucks that they don't have their first round draft pick. I would love to have that, but having 2 top 40 picks, and in particular having number 33, which is as close as you can get to the first round, isn't a bad way to go. The other bright side is, even though they're picking in the second round, this draft really has some of the deepest positions at the positions of need that the Panthers have the most. We're talking about center, of course, which they've talked about, and of course, wide receiver. 2 positions that say you can find quality starters and contributors later on in first and the second round, and even the third round, and maybe even later on in this draft. And again, picking at 33, they have a myriad of options. They could trade up into that first round, be aggressive, and go get that guy that they have marked on their board very high. They could stay put and just go best player available. This has worked for them before in the past. You really can't go wrong with getting the highest guy on your board. Somebody's bound to fall in a draft that has positions, like I said, that are that deep. Teams could be aggressive on certain positions, and a good player will fall to you. There's always surprises in the draft. Or they could trade back, try to get more draft picks, maximize value, because this team does need help in a lot of places. So in this video today, we're going to take an analytical look. We're going to look at some stats, history, a couple of different scenarios to figure out what is the smartest course of action for the Carolina Panthers in that second round at pick number 33 and 39. But make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. My name is Aaron Duncan with the Necessary Bluntness Sports Talk. I do Panthers content and just pretty much covering the team with news and updates, film breakdowns, and live streams. And I will be doing a live stream watch party for the NFL draft all weekend. I will be giving away merchandise for the Carolina Panthers live on air. So make sure you join me as I break down picks as they happen. Just talk about the draft, hang out, have some drinks, have some fun. Make sure you mark your calendars for that draft. Hit the subscribe button down below and that bell icon so you're up to date on everything that has to do with that. So let's talk about the potential of the Carolina Panthers trading up from number 33 into that first round. Now, we know a lot of people think that the Panthers will likely take at number 33 a wide receiver, just because this wide receiver class is so deep. But if there's a run on wide receivers, it may make the Panthers a little bit nervous and feel like they need to get into that first round to get one of the top guys. After the big 3, of course, of Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze, there's a little bit of fluidity in front of who's the next. Some people like Brian Thomas Jr. Of course, you have Adonai Mitchell. Lat McConkey is getting some first round buzz. Let's say that one of those guys falls into the teens or the 20s. Do the Panthers trade up for that? My personal feelings is that they shouldn't do that, because we got Deontay Johnson in that trade. Receiver is not that big of a need for them, but if a guy is in range, it could be something to consider. I know the biggest argument for it is, hey, trade up into that first round. That way you get that 5th-year option in terms of the first round draft pick. I will have to argue that if you're looking to trade up for a wide receiver, the analytics and the numbers show that there's not much value gained by doing that. But the way the 5th-year option works for wide receivers, the price of it is very high. If you hit on that first round wide receiver and that 5th-year option, let's say he makes 1 Pro Bowl, you could be paying over $22 million for that 5th-year option. The going rate for receivers right now currently is in the 20 millions anyway. So you're only saving about $1 million or $2 million regardless on that, and you had to give up draft capital. So in that scenario, you would probably pay a wide receiver after their 4th season anyway. So what is the benefit of that 5th-year option when you can get them in the second round, have them under a 4-year deal for way cheaper, and then just agree to a contract from there? Just thinking out loud as a Panthers fan, I just don't see any full benefit of giving up extra draft capital to move up for one particular player. One particular player is not going to get us where we need to be. We need talent and young talent contributing on rookie contracts all over this roster. So there's not one necessarily player that's going to come and turn things around for us in this draft in the first round. So let's look at the scenario of potentially staying put and going best player available in the draft that's on your board. You do your research, you do your homework through this pre-draft process, you make your list, you see who gets drafted. Like I mentioned before, there's guys that are bound to fall. It happens every time, and you can end up having a good player fall in your lap. If there is a run on receivers in that first round, that means a defender could fall back. You do need a cornerback. You do need a defensive end or edge for the future. You could use a linebacker as well. There needs to be a youth movement on this roster of guys that are young, that are contributing on rookie deals. That way the Panthers have draft capital, of course, to go forward, but also have salary cap space. The way that you build a team that has cap space, you got to get guys that hit in the draft that are contributing in the second and third round, that are not making a lot of money, but are giving you a ton of production over value. And so I see nothing wrong with staying put and just taking the best player on the board, regardless of what position it could be, and just getting that guy to come in and help your team and just elevate the pool of talent on this team overall. And like I said, if a corner like Kool-Aid McKinstry or Nate Wiggins falls out of the first round, I'm all over that, because we know that with J.C. Horn and the trade of Dante Jackson, we are going to need somebody at the cornerback position to really come in here. I know that they may be negotiating with Stephon Gilmore, but Stephon Gilmore is longer in the tooth and not a long-term answer. But outside of a top cornerback like that, or maybe even an edge rusher, I don't know if BPA is that guy. I see a lot of fans are talking about if certain center or linebacker falls out of the first round, whether it's Peyton Wilson for the North Carolina State local product, that's the favorite there, or Jackson Powers Johnson, the Oregon center, falls to them, that they would be all over it. But look at some of this data in terms of the draft position for the highest paid players at each position. As you can see by this chart, the average draft position is 3.8 for linebackers and 3.7 for the top 10 highest paid centers in the league. So think about it. That means you can find these type of guys in late day 2, even day 3. And that's the case with this draft as well. I do like Jackson Powers Johnson, but there are guys that you can find later like Bo Limmer, or you can find a guy like Cedric Van Pran from University of Georgia. You can also find a guy like Cedric Gray from the University of North Carolina, a Tar Heel, that is going to be a later pick, that is a great player that has some high upside potential. So what this chart tells me is that center and linebacker aren't necessarily premium positions in terms of using that type of draft capital on them. And so that would be a reason why, if those are the type of the guys on the top of your board, that maybe BPA isn't the best way, because you can get guys in better value later. That brings me to the last scenario, which is my personal favorite, which I think they should do, and that's trading back in the draft. Now, our former general manager, Scott Fitter, did a lot of dumb stuff when he was a general manager, but one thing he was right about is something that he said in his opening press conference when he was hired by the team.
In Seattle, we've historically picked, mid-20s, late 20s over the last 10 years. And when you look at the draft, when you build the board, there's a certain level of player that stops about 16, 17, or 18. So once we're picking at 25, we know we're not going to get those, what we consider players that are going to come in and be impact players. We don't see a big difference between 25 and 40 at that point. So we can move back, acquire picks, and still get the same caliber of player that fits our team.
But my non-educated theory is pretty much that the teams that are picking in that back half of the draft, they don't always have the biggest needs, because they were close to a Super Bowl. They may have a more complete roster, so they are more apt to draft for need instead of just whoever is the BPA, because they don't have certain holes. They can afford to draft for need. And so there, the talent gap between certain prospects is a little bit jumbled up, and who's available where can get a little bit messy. And that's how some guys end up falling to that second round, end up becoming phenomenal players. So sometimes, like I said, that 30-player gap between pick 15 and the middle of the second round seems to be so jumbled up. But don't just take my word for it. I picked up an article from these bloggers from the Philadelphia Eagles, and they talked about this article by PFF where they talked about the most valuable picks being between the middle of the first and the middle of the second. And the reason is because since the rookie wage scale was introduced, every pick gets an automatic salary. They mark the player performance of their on-field value, and I think they use Pro Football Reference, who has a kind of a formula to show how good or bad a player is. But they graph the player value from picks 1 through 100 just to show that there's a steep drop-off from the first to the 15 picks, but after that, it's such a gradual drop-off that the talent gap is just not that big, and it supports that. Most of those guys, since there's a rookie wage scale, tend to outperform their contracts over the long term. So it just makes more sense that there's more value there. I guess the big picture is that the allocated salaries on the rookie wage scale drops way, way faster. And with the draft being so much of a crapshoot, that there's a lot more value to pick later, because you can just say, hey, this is our board, versus being the person at the top who has all the options in the world. Sometimes having more options and being a high pick, it's a lot harder to hit there. But when you have more value in that back end to see how things fall and come to you, you can make a wiser decision. So let's look at some examples of trading down and make a case there. That same article proposed that the Vikings traded down in 2022, and this is what happened. They gave up pick number 12 and 46, and they traded with the Lions, who they gave pick number 32, number 34, and pick number 66. And some of the picks were traded again at a later date, but you can kind of look at this. Jamison Williams hasn't really caught on for the Lions. Josh Pascal, the same way, he's had some injuries. Granted, the Vikings didn't get a ton of value out of that, but look at the type of players that they got. Louis Cine, they said he tore his ACL, so he didn't help much there. So look at it. A more productive wide receiver in Christian Watson was attained. They also got a safety that they needed, but also got an extra third on top of that. The article mentioned the 2019 trade scenario with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers traded up to get a linebacker. They traded up from pick number 20 to pick number 10. They gave up pick number 20, 52, and an extra third round pick to move up for Devin Bush into the top 10. And look who the Broncos got. They got Noah Fant, who's a very, very solid tight end. Drew Sample, who's a tight end, a solid tight end as well. And they also got a bonus pick. Devin Bush has pretty much been a draft bust, and they really didn't get much out of him at all. It's just so hard to pick that high and be accurate. Yes, you have a better chance of getting a better player, but sometimes this is just a lot more pressure on there than just letting the board fall to you and maximizing value. Again, the draft is not a science, so it's really all about maximizing value, and that's exactly what Denver was able to do in that scenario. And one more trade scenario I wanted to propose that was in this range is the Chargers and the Patriots back from 2020. The Patriots traded back from 23 and received pick number 37 and pick number 71. The Chargers traded up to get, lo and behold, a linebacker. They ended up drafting Kenneth Murray, who really didn't end up getting an extension with the Chargers, and in a whole nother team now, he's playing with the Tennessee Titans. So a guy that didn't work out for them was essentially a draft bust, not really a bust, but just not a great player that was in their long-term plans. Meanwhile, the Patriots, who picked up an extra third just to move back, got great value with Kyle Duggar. Kyle Duggar has been a great safety for them, even though he played at a small school, just signed a big contract extension with the team to stay around. They also got pick number 71. They later traded pick number 71 to the Ravens, but look at the caliber of player that the Ravens got at 71. They were able to get Justin Madubuike, who is one of the top 5 highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL. So you tell me, Kenneth Murray, a first round draft pick at 23 that didn't work out for them, or Justin Madubuike and Kyle Duggar, 2 of the highest paid players at their position, 2 of the best players at their position in the NFL based on that. The value is just completely lopsided. So being able to get more top 100 picks is always the best way to go over trading up, in my opinion. So being able to maneuver in that, like I said, that 15 to 45 range, and also still maybe get an extra third round draft pick, you're not losing a ton of value because you can still get great players there. And with pick number 33, it's smack dab in that range, so they can move back even to a 35, 40, maybe 40 something, and still have pick number 39 and feel good about their board and having the right player getting there, maximize value, but also pick up an extra third round pick. Hopefully it works out like it did for the Ravens. But like I said, the Panthers just need more contributors than anything. They don't have a ton of long-term answers on this roster anywhere outside of maybe Bryce Young, if you feel okay about him. They don't have a long-term answer at running back. They don't have a long-term answer at wide receiver, tight end. Their offensive line still has some question marks. Icky could be the long-term answer, but we don't know about that yet. On defense, Derek Brown is locked up. That's good to know. Cornerback, J.C. Horn is still, and outside of that, everybody else is a little bit longer in the tooth. They need a youth movement and an influx of talent everywhere. So being able to get more top 100 picks, who are guys that are typically the ones that work out in the best of the best in each draft, is the best way to go, in my opinion. So I am a big fan of the Panthers trading back from pick number 33. And local beat writers even hinted at this. Joe Person from The Athletic wrote in the article that said he would be surprised if Dan Morgan did not trade back. So the crumbs are there and the tea leaves are looking like this could be a possibility with them having those 2 second-round picks. But an example of some value for pick number 33 is you look just last year in last year's draft. The Arizona Cardinals had pick number 33, and they ended up trading with the Tennessee Titans for that Will Levis trade. Titans traded pick 41, 72, and a future third rounder, and the Cardinals gave up pick number 33 and pick number 81. So pretty much the Cardinals moved back 8 spots in the second, moved up 8 spots in the third, and picked up an extra third rounder next year. Of course, the Titans chose Will Levis because quarterbacks sometimes are those guys that teams want to trade up for. If a Michael Penix falls out of the first round, do the Raiders, who are at like 44, trade up because they want to get a quarterback of the future? That could be a potential thing. So I think 33 could hold some value, and I think adding a third or being able to get a second, depending on where you were able to move at, could be the way to go. But you guys let me know down below in the comments, after all the data and the scenarios I presented, what do you think is the smartest course of action? Do you agree with me and the data that trading back is the best way to maximize value because we just need so much help on this roster overall? Or do you want to just stay put, don't get too trade happy, go best player available and let the board fall where it falls? Or do you say, F that, I want to trade up and get my guy because I want to get one of the top receivers because I'm in love with a certain prospect? Let me know how you feel down below in the comments. Without further ado, my name is Aaron Duncan, signing off with this Blunt Sports Talk. I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I'll see you next time. Peace.